Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our webinar today. So basically, this webinar is organized by the ASEAN Centre for Energy on the topic of energy efficiency finance mechanism. So I'm Rio John Peter Chilitonga, the project manager of ASEAN Cooperative project on financing mechanism design for EE projects implementation in ASEAN. I will be the moderator of this webinar. Before we jump into the main topic of this webinar, we would like to highlight you briefly about the ASEAN Centre for Energy. The ASEAN Centre for Energy is established in 1999 to initiate, facilitate, and also to implement the energy cooperation in ASEAN member states. The center has a vision to be the think tank by identifying and surfacing innovative solutions, and also to be the energy data and knowledge hub by providing a knowledge depository for ASEAN member state, and also to be the catalyst by unifying and strengthening ASEAN energy cooperation and integrations. Some activities undertaken by ASEAN Centre for Energy, including policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks and technologies, policy research analytics, energy database, and also implementing energy cooperation by engaging with dialogue partners and international organizations, and also secretariat to facilitate the energy meeting on in ASEAN member state. This webinar is organized by the ASEAN Centre for Energy in relation to the ASEAN Cooperative project on financing mechanism design for e-project implementation, which is supported by ASEAN Secretariat and funded by Japan ASEAN Integrated Fund JAI. All the speakers here are the expert of the project of ASEAN Cooperative project on financing mechanism design. The project will support ASEAN member states to develop mechanism to enhance financing for energy efficiency depending on their current status and financial institution available in ASEAN member state country. This is also to assist the target of ASEAN to reduce energy intensity by 20% based on 2005 level in 2020. Therefore, this project, via a series of workshops and also international consultant support, experts, aims to enable exchange and support the development of effective energy efficiency financing mechanism in the region. This is the agenda of our today's webinar. This will be an hour webinar. Will be hear an introduction from the ASEAN Centre for Energy regarding the goals and the objectives of this webinar, including a brief overview of the financing mechanism status in ASEAN member state. And we also will be hearing presentation from three speakers, speaker 1 and speaker 2, and also the third speakers. And after the presentation of the speakers, we'll be have opportunities to have discussion and also question and answer on the particular topic. By the end of this webinar today, we're going also to recap and summarize what actually the key points of this webinar. I would like actually to introduce the speakers and also the panelists for today's webinar. The first one, Dr. Verena Streitferd, Senior Policy Expert, ASEAN Cooperative Project on Financing Mechanism Design Supporting Mechanism. Verena has over 10 years of experience in sustainable energy policy, climate finance, and urban governance in the Southeast Asia context. Her PhD research analysis in depth 2 energy efficiency finance programs, one focused on ESCO and one on banks. The second speaker, Mr. Kevin Hoare, Energy Efficiency and Conservation Expert, ASEAN Cooperative Project on Financing Mechanism Design, Public Mechanism. Kevin Hoare holds 2 degrees from Imperial College London and has developed energy efficiency financing and incentive models, policy papers, and implemented low-cost, no-cost, and investment energy saving measures. Having Green RE and Green Building Index, Microgrids measurement and verification and certified energy auditor certifications, he has worked on numerous energy efficiency, industrial, commercial, and residential building design and standard development. The third speaker, Mr. Victor C. Abainza, financial expert, ASEAN Cooperative Project on financing mechanism design public-private mechanism. He is currently a senior consultant of the ADFI-AP Consulting AC Group, holding a postgraduate degree in regional industrial development from the Research Institute of Management Science, Netherlands. He is one of the international senior project managers from ADFI-AP that manage a 4-year EU-funded project on establishing an ASEAN clean tech MSME financing network in 3 target countries in China, Indonesia, and in India. We have also panelists here, Mr. Alberto Verena, energy and financial expert, ASEAN Cooperative Project on financing mechanism, that going to give his views and also overview on the topic that will be presented by our speakers today. Before, we also would like to share with you that ASEAN Centre and also AGEP, ASEAN German Energy Program, financing mechanism, has conducted study in 2018. So the study conducted by ASEAN Centre for Energy, also in collaboration with GIZ and also Sopol Indonesia. The study conducted for the period of January to December 2018 with the methodology by desktop research and also verification with AMS through series of workshops. I'd just like to give you a brief what actually the findings and the recommendation of the study that we have been conducting this study, but for the details will be presented by the experts related to the EE financing mechanism situation and also recommendation for ASEAN region. So this is the ENC goals in ASEAN. In ASEAN has committed already to reduce 20% of energy intensity by 2020 and also 30% by 2025 with a baseline 2015. Under the APEC, what we call ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, the energy efficiency program is designed into 4 main areas. The first one is harmonizing EE standard and labeling requirements and also building codes with EE and conservation criteria. The third one is co-participation for EE promotion and financial institution participation for EE development. So these outcome-based strategies aims to reduce the EE and also to unlock the EE potential saving in ASEAN that, according to the ASEAN Energy Outlook, the 5th ASEAN Energy Outlook, the energy saving potential in ASEAN final consumption side is 10% by 2040 compared to the business as usual. According to the study on e-financing mechanism in ASEAN, we also summarize in the report the current status, policy plan, acts, and also financing instrument that already available in ASEAN member states. From Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. We can see in the detail in the report that will be available by early next year about the status of the policy and also the related energy efficiency regulations in ASEAN member states. For instance, some ASEAN member states have established some regulation and also supportive policy to support the financing mechanism operationalization in ASEAN member state, and some ASEAN member states still on the way in order to put all the supportive policy in bringing up the financing instrument for energy efficiency. This is the outcomes and also the outputs that are expected from our program related to energy efficiency mechanism in ASEAN. By conducting this program, it is expected that we can deliver the energy saving in ASEAN member state in gigawatt hour, and also some increasing on the project investment in energy efficiency, including linking to reduction of greenhouse gas emission in ASEAN member state. So for further details, and also without further ado, I would like to invite the first speakers to present her presentation, Mr. Verena. senior policy expert, ACE project financing mechanism design and supporting mechanism of in ASEAN member state. Mr. Verena, please. Mr. Verena, Ms. Verena, sorry, Dr. Verena Streitferd, we would like to invite you to present your presentation slide, please.
Yes, sorry, can you see my slides now?
Hold on, would you please, we can't see your slides yet.
Okay, I'm not. Okay, can you hear me now? I can't seem to share the screen. There is no link or anything for me to click. Could you share it again one more time, Pakrio, please? Sorry for this.
Yeah,
okay.
Verena, please.
So you can see my screen now?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect.
We're running your presentation from my laptop, so please, yeah, start your presentation.
Okay, so yes, so thank you very much for the opportunity. I just want to stress that this is a brief overview of content that we will also present in our workshop next week here in Bangkok with the ASEAN member states. So it will just give a brief glimpse of some of the case studies that we will discuss more in detail there with the ASEAN member states. And I'm quite looking forward to have a detailed discussions with them about how to move energy efficiency finance mechanism forward. And I think it's a quite timely topic. I also, just a little anecdote, I read an article just on the 9th of December in the ASEAN Post on towards an energy efficient ASEAN, where basically it was discussed how much funding needs to be invested in the next 20 years, really, to ensure the energy systems in ASEAN member states are running sustainably for the industry and the economic development of those countries. So I think energy efficiency will play a very large role to meet those goals, to achieve sustainable energy for all in the ASEAN member states. So I think it's very timely that ASEAN member states think about to further support energy efficiency implementation via financial support in those countries. So first slide, please, Pakrio. Can you please go up? Yes. Oh, okay. So I think there's an issue with the PowerPoint. Okay, so why energy efficiency finance mechanism? I will just have a brief introduction. So the main problem is energy efficiency investments are usually rather small, and they're not the core focus of the implementer. So either industry, building, or also transportation sector. So the energy consumption usually is just a side operational cost for them that they don't really focus on. So incentive mechanisms are needed to attract the sector to really implement energy efficiency in their building industry or in the transport sector. Also, energy efficiency is an invisible resource, so sometimes it's very difficult to explain that actually through the energy savings, energy costs are saved that can be used and are freed up for the operation of the consumer for other purposes and investments. Here you will see, like now on the presentation, you see the types of energy efficiency finance mechanisms that are out there. So from public, private, moving to the private and supporting mechanisms. So just to give a brief overview, that on the public side, you can have tax systems. So for example, exempt energy service providers, or also technology importers for energy efficient technologies of taxes, so to incentivize their deployment in the countries. There can also be grants, so 28% subsidy programs. Green procurement guidelines to adjust in your public buildings the procurement for energy efficiency technologies. On the public-private, there are several options. So there can be super ESCOs, utility-based financing, energy efficiency revolving funds, dedicated credit lines, carbon financing. On the private side, there is the options for commercial loans, so energy efficiency loans. Sometimes you can also blend that with some concessional lending from development banks so that the interest rate are reduced to make it attractive for the customers. You can also have ESCO finance. Energy performance contracting is quite popular because basically the customer doesn't have to finance on balance those investment costs for energy efficiency, but they can outsource it to the ESCO company that will advance the finance and be paid back via energy savings. Another recently occurring opportunity is green bonds and green sukuks, which is the Islamic version of the green bond. So basically, again, either government or the private sector provides a financing tool towards customers that would like to invest into sustainable projects, and then these projects can be for transportation or for buildings and can also include energy efficiency measures. Supporting mechanisms are more measures that support energy efficiency deployment and energy efficiency financing. So financial guidelines for banks about green finance by the central banks, or again, procurement guidelines, de-risking mechanisms, and regional project matchmaking hubs, for example, that can operate at a regional level. Next. Okay, so here you can also see, this is just a brief example about the diversity of these mechanisms. So on the left-hand side, you have some examples, and I don't want you to look at everything, but just have an idea that obviously every mechanism has different target groups and has also different sizes that they adhere to. I think that's very important. So banks will always look for rather large financing, as you can see, energy efficiency loans. So, the project sizes can be up to 20 million. So, they won't finance energy efficiency projects that are only 10,000 euro, for example. That would be very small for them and very unattractive compared to their other lending opportunities. So I think it is very important to understand that these financing tools or mechanisms always have different target groups and also different sizes of financial volume that they can support. Next. And you can also see that there is kind of a sequence, they would say, but I would also argue, it doesn't have to be exclusive a sequence from left to right, but definitely initially the government has to step in to provide grants and to provide tax incentives to really start energy efficiency implementation. And then once the market becomes more mature, and that's not just financial, but also in terms of the technology providers, the technology out there, the service providers, they can move from really grant-based projects to perhaps funds and revolving funds that are also then refunded by the customers that implement energy efficiency, and then really move up towards more private, purely private finance. So for example, via bonds or commercial financing. However, all of this sequence also has to be embedded in the framework conditions of the different countries and also on the regulatory system. So the framework conditions are quite important to assess which kind of energy efficiency finance mechanism will make sense in the respective countries. Next. So here you have some examples of those framework conditions. So they can be, of course, the energy price in the countries, the legal system, because, for example, for ESCO finance, there has to be a contract made between the customer and the ESCOs, and obviously you need to make sure that you can also legally follow up with this contract if it is, not followed. Then also, obviously, energy service providers, the state of the technologies, and also a core item is the demand for the external energy efficiency finance. So who are the target groups, who is targeted by public policies, but also who has very high energy consumption and thus might be quite interested to implement energy efficiency in their business. Next. So I'm just going to give you a very brief glimpse of two case studies that I will go more in depth in also the workshop. So one is on a rather new program on energy efficiency insurance. This is from a pilot case in Mexico, implemented by the Inter-Development Bank in Latin America. So the description is energy saving insurance. It is an instrument tool that provides the insurance and supporting instruments for energy efficiency investment. So it takes off the risk of a default of these energy efficiency projects. So here are as I mentioned, the Inter-American Development Bank and CPI and the Danish Energy Agency are the proponents. And the purpose is to stimulate energy efficiency investment, especially in the emerging economies, and reduce the burden to risk the investors and the loan providers, so that the loan provider that, for example, provides a loan to the ESCO firm ensures that they will get repaid by the energy savings of the projects via that insurance. Yes, and in this case, the target was on the SME sector and the agro-industry sector, and service commercial sector and industry sector can be other targets. Next. Next. I'm sorry, I'm not going through all these slides because actually I've hidden them because I think this is an older version. So I'm just going to say next, next, next until we go to the final one. So because I know we have. Next. Next. This is the mechanism, but I'm also not going to go through that. Next, please. Okay, some of the main results. So because of this insurance, you can increase the after-tax equity and investment return by up to 15%. The credit line can be covered up to 75% loan of the upfront investment costs, and with the tenures of up to 8 years. So the first fast-track pilot project that they have implemented in Mexico was for 10 fast-track projects that they have identified. And the total cost saving per year was $400,000 US just from the implementation of the energy efficiency projects. And the cost of the insurance part was 2.2 million that they estimated. And the total energy saving was 4.9 gigawatt that they could receive through these energy efficiency projects. Next. And if you can think of, 4.9 gigawatt for a country, that is quite significant because, for example, I mean, it was a very rough estimation, but if you compare, for example, what a gas power plant costs in Mexico, so 300 megawatt for about 250 million, if you think about 4.9 gigawatt, you will actually have $4 billion US saved that the government otherwise would have had to invest to produce those energy via a gas power plant or otherwise. So I think what I want really to stress is that it's really cost effective, these energy efficiency programs. So even if you provide a financial mechanism and you put some public money in, your returns will be very high in terms of the energy costs that you could save, and which is also somehow the service of the government to provide. Next. Okay, the second case study is the Energy Efficiency Revolving Fund in Thailand. So these are some of the framework conditions in place, just to demonstrate how important they are, but I'm not going to go through them as well. Next. Next. Yes, so this is the rough structure of the Energy Efficiency Revolving Fund. So the fund provides loans to 11 banks, and they on lend to their customers on energy efficiency, but also renewable energy projects. So the maximum, it's on lend to them on 0 interest rate. They have a certain limitations of the credit, like the amount that they can provide to each customer. And the loans have a maximum 7-year period of repayment. Next. Next. So again, I'm just going to jump to the result because we're very limited on time. So also this program has indicated that, you know, they have the saved electricity from this project, so $235 million public funding, and 1.7 gigawatts has been saved by these projects. And again, like if you convert that, this is also again a very rough calculation, but you know, quite a large amount of money can be saved because you don't have to provide that energy via power plants, which are quite costly and expensive. Next. Okay, yes, so I think also to keep in the time limit, this is just a brief glimpse into those case studies that we're going to discuss more next week in the workshop. Thank you, Patrio.
Thank you, Dr. Verena, for your presentation just now that highlighted about the e-financing mechanism best practice and case study from Mexico on how the e-financing mechanism can generate a project investment in energy efficiency, in particular in Mexico on power plant slate, and also energy efficiency revolving fund case study in Thailand, including structure and also how the revolving fund able also to implement energy efficiency investment in Thailand. All right, so the second presenter, we would like to invite Mr. Kevin Thor to present a presentation about some best practices on energy efficiency mechanism in selected as a member state and also case study from international. So Mr. Kevin, we would like to ask you to start your presentation. Please, Mr. Kevin.
Thank you. Can I just check that everyone can see my screen right now?
Yes, you can.
Yes, great.
Yes.
So what I'll be focusing on would be energy efficiency financing, and this relates to supporting mechanisms that brings you a little out of the box against the conventional financing methods or schemes available. Now, I start off by looking at the public and private mechanisms. Now, a common trait of public-private mechanism is most often the case that you ask the question, who has the cash? The person who has the cash is the one who puts in the investment. And this often comes from the private sector. As you can imagine, energy efficiency financing is capital intensive. A lot of money is required. But however, another common trait is that public-private mechanisms do require government support. And why I say that is through this example, the following 2 examples. SDCL is a private equity fund in Singapore. It is called the Sustainable Development Capital Asia Limited Fund. This is a private sector-led initiative. The fund was created for profits. Their mandate is to invest into energy efficiency projects, and they do so on an independent basis where they undertake due diligence, undertake the IRR considerations of projects, and then make investments to make a profit out of it. This fund was launched in 2014, and even then, the creation of such a fund required the collaboration of the Singapore government through the Economic Development Board, where 200 million Singapore dollars was set aside for the creation of this fund. Now, in Malaysia, on the other hand, there is another 200 million ringgit fund targeting energy performance contracts and energy service companies. This was done with the Malaysia Debt Ventures, local development bank in Malaysia, owned by the Ministry of Finance in Malaysia. They target energy service companies who intend to undertake energy efficient projects in the country. The bank undertakes due diligence internally prior to disbursements of loans. And just like SDCL in Singapore, private type funds like that have, again, support. In Malaysia, it's supported by the Ministry of Energy, who provides them a credit guarantee financing, as well as a contribution from an international multilateral energy efficiency project. So these are the common traits that, as mentioned earlier by Dr. Verena, that as the market matures, even at the extreme right in her chart just now, the private sector still requires, to a certain extent, some form of support in the developments of such funds. I now move on to the private mechanisms. Now, this is interesting. Why I say so is because recently in Malaysia, we have a local bank called CIMB. CIMB, through its Islamic and Commercial Bank, signed on to become part of the United Nations Environment Programme Finance Initiative. They are the first in Southeast Asia, if I'm not mistaken, to do so. And as part of that, the bank had privately and created new products. One being a product to provide preferential financing rates for new hybrid vehicles, as well as a reduction in interest rates for green buildings. In Malaysia, they have chosen to partner with or adhere to a certain rating tool called the Green Building Index. However, what the intention of this slide is to show that private companies and organizations can support it and do so in different manners. And this is one such manner in which different regions of different member states can emulate. Now, I'm going to take a step out and be a bit more, I would say, different in this case now. The next slides that you'll see are related to carbon financing and how carbon financing can leverage with new technologies such as blockchain. Carbon financing will take place in Singapore through a carbon tax, where it's anticipated that a 5 Singapore dollar per ton will be imposed on 40 industrial companies in Singapore. The intention of the tax is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as part of its commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement. It is said that the revenue from the tax will be used to fund measures for industrial energy emission reduction. And businesses can choose to reduce emissions or subsequently pay a tax for targets that are not met. Carbon financing is relatively new. Singapore is probably the first in the Southeast Asian nation to do so. But with this new tax and methodology comes the opportunities to look at leveraging technology to use to enable carbon tax or carbon financing. One such way is through blockchain, through renewable energy credits or energy efficiency carbon credits. Energy blockchain projects are widespread right now. On the screen right now, you see a world map indicating the number of different initiatives in the regions where people are trying to develop energy blockchains. You'll see that a lot of blockchains projects are geared towards peer-to-peer financing, energy financing, and with some other projects geared towards electric vehicle charging stations. An example of carbon financing related to the blockchain could be as such on screen. So if you're a renewable energy project developer, you develop the 1 megawatt solar farm. That probably takes up 4 acres of land. That, at least in the Malaysian context, can generate about 1,000 tons of CO2 per year, which when converted could be potentially worth about $4,000 per year. This is revenue unseen by a lot of project developers. They, for one reason, $4,000 per year is relatively small. The cost of certifying these carbon credits is relatively high, and therefore most projects often miss out on this way of monetizing the energy project that they undertake. Blockchain can provide a quick way to do energy performance tracking through the ledger capabilities of blockchains. It can provide transaction settlements, can provide crowdfunding capabilities, where in Australia and the US, they have successfully raised money to develop energy projects through blockchain technology. And finally, you can use blockchains to keep track of the energy savings or energy generated data and monetize the carbon that comes out of it. The reason why it might be an interest to do so through blockchain is because as an individual building owner or project developer, as illustrated just now, even if you have a 1 megawatt solar farm, the potential revenue out of the carbon credits is far too small. There will be a need for an aggregator, a regional distributed ledger, and cooperation between member states to just possibly look towards aggregating these and then providing a platform to certify them so that small project holders can benefit from this additional way to improve energy efficiency financing. Many companies out there doing so. This is just an example of the companies who are out there in the marketplace. And you see that, and there are companies very close by to you that focus on very different things, from electric vehicles to solar. But what I want to focus on are the companies that are geared towards the peer-to-peer trading. Peer-to-peer microgrids are becoming relatively tried and tested around the world. Companies like LO3 Energy has experimented in New York in this Brooklyn microgrid to provide homes through a range of renewable energy sources, so people can then opt out to decide who they want to buy energy from. Another company, Electron, has worked with the French giant EDF to do something similar as well. What's really interesting about this is the use of technology and the use of different platforms like this, decentralized immutable databases, can take a very traditional business model, which is on the left, to then become something very interesting where trading can happen. It deregularizes the markets, opens up to new revenue, and encourages investments into different forms of energy and encourage energy efficiency at the same time. So this is just a quick overview of the different ways technology and the different kinds of support that can be provided to energy efficiency financing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin, for presenting and also highlighting some innovative energy efficiency mechanism that may be applicable in ASEAN member state, and giving sample from Singapore and also from other selected ASEAN member state, and also some innovative way on how to platform for ASEAN member state to implement energy efficiency mechanism in the region. So moving to the next presentation, I would like to invite Mr. Victor C. Abainza, financial expert, ACE project financing mechanism, designed to present also his presentation related to energy efficiency financing mechanism in the small, medium enterprises sectors. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Victor to present his presentation. Please, Mr. Victor.
Thank you, Pak Trio. Just to check on everyone, is my slide clear to you?
Yeah, we can hear your voice.
You can hear my voice, but can you see my slides?
Yeah, please go ahead, Mr.
Slide presentation.
Yeah, please.
Okay. My presentation will cover on energy efficiency financing mechanisms for MSMEs in selected countries and overdue. Briefly, this session would present or highlight various financing mechanisms available to micro, small, and medium enterprises on energy efficiency for their energy efficiency projects. So why focus on MSMEs? First, basically, we all know that we are in a region wherein micro, small, and medium enterprises comprises a a major sector, a major sector in the economy, and they are major employers and use employers of the labor force, and they provide or generate additional income for uh, people in the region. And why focus on energy efficiency? Next slide, please. Basically, if you will see the the slide that or the slide that I'm showing, it has been reported that energy efficiency is the #1 climate action program used by all funds provider in the area of climate change. And this is so because if you will look at the slides, almost 49 or 50% of all projects are into energy efficiency. And if we focus both on micro, small, and medium enterprises and energy efficiency, this would have a great impact already on the industrial sector that we are operating and in the economy that we have. Improving energy efficiency among enterprises and more specifically in small and medium enterprises will lead to better energy security, improve industry profitability and competitiveness, and lessen overall energy impact of climate change. If we make MSMEs more efficient, there will be greater sustainability in their business operations and profitability in the long term. Next slide, please. Okay. Now the slides basically shows some of the major financing mechanisms being offered by most financial institutions in the ASEAN member states. And basically, we are all familiar with this. They're basically some are regular bank loans, and as previously described by some of our previous speaker, some are also into insurance and grants. So some of these financing mechanisms are your preferential loans, energy savings, insurance, grants, and then leasing is a key, is also a major financing mechanism for energy efficiency projects. Leasing, wherein the financiers are owning the energy efficiency equipment, and the customers obtains the right to use it, as in regular leasing arrangements. Then there are ESCO funding models with shared savings, which has been described by Dr. Verena. And then there's also one new financing mechanism that has been lately been used, the utility on bill financing, wherein an energy retailer or a third-party financier provides initial capital for some of the energy efficiency projects by businesses, wherein payment arrangements are made through a debit arrangement made by the borrowers to the third-party provider. Then there are white certificate schemes, wherein there are tradings of emission systems within the market to improve energy efficiency among these SM, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Having laid out some of these SME mechanisms, will the session or this particular show would highlight some of the examples of these financing mechanisms in place or used by in various countries and being promoted by development agencies. First is the energy. One example is the energy efficiency solutions for SMEs in Kyrgyzstan, which was implemented by the European Bank for Rural Development under its KRIGS Sustainable Energy Financing Facility, where the bank provided a 55 million US credit line for lending by local banks, and then this was supported by a grant component from EBRD. This was offered to businesses and private homes in Kyrgyzstan. And as of the last reporting system, it made a real difference to the environment and to the people. Total investment have helped to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by almost 39,000 tons a year, or equivalent to about taking out 13,500 cars off the streets of Kyrgyzstan. The next two slides will highlight some of the energy efficiency financing programs which I'm familiar with. These are implemented in the Philippines. Basically, the Sustainable Energy Finance Program in the implemented under by the International Finance Corporation and the Bank of Philippine Islands and to Banco de Oro Unibank. These banks are private banks and are the largest commercial banks or universal banks in the Philippines. Basically, was designed to encourage local enterprises, both small and medium enterprises, to go and invest in renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. Investment options were either in capital expenditure or working capital financing, equipment leasing. Both loans offered market-based interest rate, and in terms of its loan structure, the maximum loan for a single enterprises was around $4 million US. However, in order, as we know that the lending to small and medium enterprises are risky, this particular loan program was covered with a risk-sharing facility, which IFC provided. 50% of the total loan component was guaranteed by the sharing facility made by IFC. Also, another highlight of the program under the Sustainable Energy Finance by the two of the leading banks in the Philippines is that they are heavily investing in client-oriented capacity building initiatives. They help them in their, or they provide, the banks provide free energy audits and then provide avenues to prepare and validate the financial and financial and technical data for their loan application, because one of the real real requirements of, or one problem of the financial systems in the Philippines, that when they go into these types of projects, they are not technically equipped to appraise or evaluate these types of projects. So they have to rely on ESCOs or third-party technical consultants instead of hiring. Instead of SMEs hiring these technical consultants, the banks, through this particular technical assistance ASEAN program, provide this for free. The project was started between 2020 up to now. The two programs has invested around $3 billion investment in sustainable energy projects, wherein the banks disbursed around $880 million worth of loans. This resulted in an estimated reduction in GHG emission by up to 2 million CO2 per year. BDO, as of December 27, also issued a 150 million green bond. The next financing program is Alay sa Kaunlaran Green Energy Loan Program. What is unique here is that this is being offered by a microfinance institution, and this covers the class C or D of the economic strata in the Philippines, and they are basically in the rural areas. Some of the eligible projects being provided under this loan program are solar water pump for irrigation of the farmers, solar dryers, solar pumps, hanging bridges, and bio projects for hog raisers. Eligible borrowers are, as I mentioned, are basically for the marginalized farmers or individuals in rural communities. As of July 2018, almost 1,200 green energy loans have been disbursed with a total amount of 7.7 million pesos, which with around 6,000 beneficiaries for this particular loan project. The last financing scheme that I would like to discuss is basically the one wherein we are currently implementing in India under our under the leadership of our partner in the ACMFN project, the Confederation of Indian Industries. We know that individually MSMEs or lending to individual SMEs are risky, and that seldom would banks touch them on an individual basis. So what our partners did in India is that they formed SME clusters. These enterprises or similar industries have been formed into clusters, and then under a cluster approach, they they binded all the exporters or manufacturers in one particular area. One location wherein they did this is in the Tirupur city in India, wherein they organized the Tirupur Exporters Association. And through the SIDBI, or the Small Industry Development Bank of India, they provided a risk guarantee fund for energy efficiency projects of enterprises. Some of the environmental impacts for these projects are presented in this the last slides. Basically highlighting that within these types of projects in India, we have been around 6 million tons of CO2 has been reduced in terms of energy efficiency projects. So my last slide is basically what are the key elements of successful energy efficiency programs for SMEs. Basically, this redounds to 4 areas: the availability of information for borrowers and for the banks itself, and then the availability or provision of capacity building initiatives for both the lenders and the borrowers, and as earlier mentioned also by Dr. Verena, financial support mechanisms available to the borrowers. And lastly, other support measures that would be able to improve or make SMEs more efficient in their operations. So that ends my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Victor C. Abainza, for presenting your presentation slides regarding the e-financing mechanism in small medium enterprises, taking example from India and also the Philippines and some other countries. Thank you very much. Now we would like to move into the next agenda, and I'd like to invite our panelists, Mr. Reno, Alberto B. Reno, to give some thoughts and also views on what are the message and outstanding points of our speakers previously regarding their presentation. Please, Mr. Reno.
Can you hear me, Pakuyu and the rest? Can you hear am I coming here? Hello?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Reno.
Unmute.
Yeah, okay na.
Unmute. I think you have to unmute me. Yeah.
Please go ahead. We can hear you, Mr. Reno. Please.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you hear me now? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Pakuyu, for that, and thank you to our 3 resource speakers, namely Dr. Verena, Kevin, and Vic. Yes. Now, Dr. Verena presented 2 interesting case studies regarding the energy savings insurance in Mexico and the energy efficiency revolving fund in Thailand. Okay. Kevin, on the other hand, presented 2 case studies, mainly the SDCL private equity fund and the Malaysian Debt Ventures public initiative. Okay. And Vic discussed the various financing mechanisms in ASEAN, including the experience of 2 of the Philippines' major banks that are into financing of energy efficiency. And lastly, he made mention of part in India, US dealings with financiers or the banks. Now, I just have a common question to the three speakers. Where you are, and with respect to the projects or funds that you mentioned, what do you think is the role of the central bank in the countries in promoting or mainstreaming the financing of energy efficiency projects? I'm raising this question because in many occasions we have encountered some resistance from many banks in providing financing for energy efficiency projects because they say that there is no mandate from the central bank where they are. So, considering that the banks are still the major sources of funds for investment in EE, do you think a mandate from the central bank is necessary?
Thank you, Mr. Reno.
That's my question.
Due to the time constraint, I'd like to invite all the speakers to give their perspective related to the question. Mr. Reno, please,
yes.
Starting from Mr. Kevin.
So in Malaysia, I believe the central bank is very supportive. The Green Technology Financing Scheme exists in Malaysia. This is a scheme that has been around in Malaysia since the early 2000s. It has funded many different types of projects. In fact, there's a new iteration called Green Technology Financing Scheme 2.0 right now, which has a dedicated stream just for energy service companies. The creation of the Energy Efficiency Fund through Malaysia Debt Ventures is also evidence of the support of the Malaysian government to an extent, where because Malaysia Debt Ventures is owned by the Ministry of Finance, related to the central bank to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Kevin. We would like also to hear from Dr. Verena related to the question from Mr. Reno. Please, Dr. Verena.
Pak Rio.
Mr. Victor.
I'm sorry. The direction of Kevin was not in full. I could not hear everything that he said.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have any perspective.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hear everything that Kevin said.
So, would you like to respond to Mr. Reno question regarding the importance of the role of the central bank in order to encourage the financing mechanism?
Yeah,
Please.
I was only able to hear the case of Central Malaysia, where he said there is a central bank support, but the rest of what he said, I wasn't able to get anymore.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Victor. And then we'd like to hear from Dr. Verena. What do you think about the central bank for the EE finance mechanism to support the project in some countries?
I think central banks have shown, especially in the Asian region, already some support for green financing, perhaps not specifically on energy efficiency. I think For example, I've heard in India, the Central Bank of India has issued some preferential lending conditions for renewable energy projects as one of the priority areas of the government. So that has not been reached out yet to energy efficiency, but it's hoped that that might become one of the other focal areas. Also, central banks can give guidelines to the banks to provide funding to the green sector. I mean, there's some regulations that's not directly from the central bank, but from the Ministry of Finance, or for example, in Indonesia, OJK has issued some regulations that banks actually have to report in their yearly reports on green finance proportions of their lending or financing portfolios. So I think, yes, central banks have quite an important role to play to also mandate to banks to look into this new green financing opportunities and to move the banks forward to also provide financing solutions for energy efficiency and renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Verena, for your perspective in terms of the role of the central bank on the implementation of the e-financing mechanism. So we come to the end of this webinar. We would like to thank to all speakers, Dr. Verena, Mr. Kevin, and also Mr. Victor, and our panelist, Mr. Reno. Thank you so much for your time and also sharing your knowledge and expertise and also your experiences in implementing the energy efficiency mechanism in some countries. And also, we would like to thank you to all the participants for joining our today's webinar. Hopefully, you found this webinar useful and you have gained already information and understanding about the current status of energy efficiency financing mechanism in ASEAN member state, including some best practices on the type of e-financing mechanism that might be applicable in ASEAN member state in the future. So due to the time constraint, we have been seeing some question, and then we will reply to the question by email. We will send out to all the participants the question that we haven't answered during this webinar today. And with that, I would like to conclude our webinar, and then we hope we'll see you again in our webinar series in the future. And thank you everyone again. Have a nice day. Thank you very much for your participation. Bye-bye.